passenger revolt on Flight 93 began at 9:57 a.m. on September 11, 2001. The passengers voted on whether to act. By this time, Flight 77 had struck the Pentagon, and Flights 11 and 175 had struck the World Trade Center towers. The plane left its Washington, D.C. course after the passengers revolted and the hijackers began maneuvering the plane violently in response. It ultimately crashed in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all 44 passengers. 36 years prior, 37 miles to the north and west of this well-known crash site was a different kind of crash site, one that has remained controversial for close to 60 years. Join me now as darkness falls. We explore the UFO incident in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. On December 9, 1965, thousands of people across 6 U.S. states and Ontario reported seeing a fireball streak across the afternoon sky. In Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, residents reported a crash in the nearby woods. U.S. military personnel arrived shortly thereafter, and with the assistance of the state police and local fire personnel, sealed off the area. The local radio and news stations reported the sighting of a mysterious object in the sky that had crash-landed around the community of Acme. Reports quickly changed as people and reporters found their way to Kecksburg to see the fallen object and determine what had occurred. After the event, local witnesses who arrived on the scene before the military moved in have described seeing a bronze-colored acorn-shaped object, roughly the size of a VW Beetle, bearing markings that resembled Egyptian hieroglyphics being loaded onto and taken away by the military in a flatbed tractor-trailer truck. Official statements the next day attributed the fireball and crash to a mid-sized meteor and asserted that nothing had been recovered from the woods in Kecksburg. But over the years, spectators claimed they'd been forcefully turned away by armed military personnel when they tried to approach the site for a better look. And stories circulated about Men in Black-style officials turning up at homes of Kecksburg residents and warning them to keep quiet about what they saw. Military forces had allegedly taken the object to Lockbourne Air Force Base during the night. Then, it was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the headquarters for the Federal Aviation Authority. The Kecksburg UFO incident remains a mystery today, surrounded by many different conspiracies and government cover-ups. The first conspiracy compiled by researchers was that pieces of the Russian aircraft Cosmos 96 landed in Kecksburg. Researchers came to this conclusion because the morning of December 9th, 1965, Cosmos 96 had landed in Canada. Cosmos 96 was a classified Soviet Union space probe that had failed to launch. However, this conspiracy was quickly disputed when Project Blue Book, the United States Air Force's UFO investigative operation, compared the trajectories of both crash sites. The trajectory of Cosmos 96 landing couldn't have played any role in the events at Kecksburg. In addition, Leslie Keene conducted in her 2003 investigation that the aircraft was not Cosmos 96 after receiving classified NASA documents on the incident in Kecksburg. Next, many people developed the theory that the alleged object was space debris or an American downed aircraft. Project Blue Book eliminated the idea of space debris by their report. Project Blue Book reported that no United States space debris was reported entering the Earth's atmosphere that day. Redfern states, as a result, elements of the U.S. Air Force took careful initial steps to try to resolve the mystery, but publicly at least, could find no evidence whatsoever that either an aircraft or a missile was a definitive culprit. The Blue Book report ended the thought of space debris or an aircraft. However, John Ventry and Owen Eichler created a new theory in 1991 that it was a GE Mark II re-entry vehicle. This theory came to light after the government released documents on the American aircraft. Ventry and Eichler discovered 4 similarities between the Kecksburg UFO and the American aircraft. The first similarity was that the GE had 4 control jets explaining the controlled, turning descent witnesses had described. In addition, the GE Mark II re-entry vehicle was constructed out of copper, explaining the green flames witnessed. Next, the photos of the re-entry vehicle showed markings that might have seemed foreign to observers. Finally, the shape of the re-entry vehicle was extremely similar, both having an acorn-shaped body. Ventry and Eichler also think the extreme military presence and quick cleanup was to cover up that American government was spying on the Soviet Union. Another conspiracy surrounding the Kecksburg UFO incident is that the object landed was an alien UFO. There are some eyewitness testimonies that state some compelling evidence that it was alien activity. One witness told Stan Gordon that they had seen an arm hanging down with 3 digits in lizard-like skin. In addition, a man working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the wreckage was reportedly taken, claimed he saw a body that was 4 to 5 feet tall and weighed about 80 pounds, lying on a workbench. The body had lizard-like skin. Don Sebastian was in Kecksburg when the object landed and attempted to access the crash site. Mr. Sebastian states that his attempt resulted in him hearing blood-curdling screams, causing him to flee the woods. In addition, NASA and the Air Force secretiveness of the events at Kecksburg added to the possibility of a UFO. The military forces who secured the crash site were heavily armed according to eyewitness testimony and were quick to resolve the situation. NASA refused to release any documentation of the event until 50 years later. The actions the government and NASA took to cover up the Kecksburg UFO incident led people to believe it was aliens. The multiple conspiracies surrounding the Kecksburg UFO incident were related directly to the government cover-up of the events. At the time of the event, the United States Air Force stated that nothing was found at the crash site, concluding it was a meteorite. In addition, Project Blue Book claimed that only 3 people were dispatched by the Air Force from a radar installation near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The team's job was to search for evidence of what came down. In recent years, experts and researchers have pressured the government and NASA to release the Kecksburg documents. Leslie Kean in 2003 requested the NASA documents to be released for a Sci-Fi Channel show aimed to unravel the complexities of the mystery. She received the documents from NASA, however, could tell there were missing files. The theory was that NASA had gotten rid of certain documents containing information about the incident. Judge Sullivan in 2007 took civil action against NASA to secure public access to all files, records, documents, and memorandum on the Kecksburg crash. The civil action revealed 3 important truths on NASA reports of the Kecksburg incident. The first was contradictory statements NASA made to its files on the Kecksburg affair. Next, people were concerned that NASA conducted less than satisfactory search for documentation. Finally, many researchers were suspicious of NASA's attempt to successfully open up the Kecksburg files. During Bill Clinton's presidency, John Podesta stated, "It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law." This statement shows that the American people are over the lack of cooperation from NASA and should release all the files about the Kecksburg mystery. They feel it's time for the Kecksburg UFO incident to come to a conclusion 50-plus years later. The events that happened at Kecksburg on December 9th, 1965 may never come to a conclusion, even with all the conspiracies. One thing is for sure. The alleged object was not the Russian space probe Cosmos 96 due to the trajectory. Project Blue Book's report eliminated the conspiracy that space debris or a missile had landed in Kecksburg. However, the release of government documents in 1991 has created the closest conspiracy to date that a GE Mark II re-entry vehicle had landed. Finally, many locals and researchers believe it was an alien UFO that had crash-landed in the small town. The lasting legacy of the Kecksburg UFO Incident is a summer festival hosted by the local volunteer fire department. The UFO festival gives witnesses, investigators, and experts the opportunity to share their recollections and theories. Stan Gordon, a Nonali researcher, states, "It's a mystery, and after so many years it would be great if we could find that conclusive information about what it was that fell from the sky that night in 1965. But it might be one of those things that we may never have the answer to." In just a few words, Stan Gordon summarizes the legacy of the Kecksburg UFO Incident as being a mystery that may never be solved. Thank you so much for joining me on Darkness Falls. If you liked what you heard today, go ahead and take a look at some of my other videos on the channel. Subscribe. Type subscribed in the links down below. Once you have, I will try my best to get back to everybody who does, and I would love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you thought about this show, and again, take a look at the other shows on the channel. Thank you so much. Until next time.